I think of murder when I go to the beach. I'm not a beach person. Hey, thank you for joining the Escape With Me book club. Escape with me, Sam Reiner.
And me, Hannah Rossell.
Into our most recent read. Come with us as we evade reality and go into detail about a new book. We'll be covering the book from beginning to end, so there will be spoilers. Today we're going to Yugoslavia, circa 1930, when it still existed.
Yes.
Hercule Poirot has gone on vacation, but as soon as he gets there, he's called back to England on urgent business. Little does Poirot realize that the train he takes back to London will soon have a mystery of its own. A vile man is found murdered in his bed, and the clues simply aren't adding up. As usual, everyone on the train is hiding something, but whose secret will lead Poirot to the murderer? So, background for this one. This is one of the first Poirot mysteries I ever read. I got Agatha Christie books from the library. I have no idea how I ended up in the Agatha Christie section. And the first book I ever read was And Then There Was None, which I stand by. That was a great precursor to Agatha Christie.
You're just truly an old soul.
I guess so. I don't know. I guess I had heard about her, and so I was like, yeah, everybody talks about her, so maybe I should read the thing. But after I read And Then There Was None, I just randomly picked up books, and one of them was Murder on the Orient Express. So this was my first Poirot mystery. I wish I had given this one to you before Death on the Nile.
At least I'd seen the movie already.
True.
I knew it went on.
Yes, it's very good. It's actually one of the later, I'm trying to remember Poirot mysteries in order. No, it's number 10 out of 39. So it's nowhere near the middle, but it's more middle than Murder of Roger Ackroyd, which we've talked about in the past. But it's kind of like she got going. It's season 2 Poirot, I would say.
This man never gets to vacation.
No, he does not.
Poor man.
I can't speak to it specifically, but because I know Nancy Drew is also guilty of it, goes on vacation trope and then finds a mystery.
Yeah, I guess that's an easy one to use.
I mean, it just allows you to have a destination you wouldn't normally.
Instead of a destination wedding, it's a destination murder.
This is why he always sounds... Okay, so in some of the books, you'll start reading it and he's just so tired.
Oh, I know.
I feel like that's why Death on the Nile, you don't realize until you read a bunch of these, but he's just like, I just want a vacation, guys. And that was his 17th book. And so he's just like, come on.
It's like the TikTok, I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
Well, too bad.
Poor Poirot.
So you watched the movie before you read the book?
Yeah, I watched the movie when it came out.
I think the movie does a really good job.
I think so too. From what I recall of the movie, granted. I feel like they didn't leave too much out from the book, unlike another movie.
When I went and saw it with my husband, because I saw it when it came out, I was very pleased with it. There were definitely things it changed because movie, and a lot of the book is literally just him sitting down and talking to people.
Yeah. Need to make it a little more exciting.
Yeah. I'm thinking specifically of the scene where they're on the bridge and he's on the support chasing after somebody.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
That's such a movie thing, but I wasn't mad about it or anything.
Where he revealed the big solve the mystery and they're all sitting in like the tunnel instead of just in the dining car.
Yeah, because it's much better visual-wise.
They Hollywoodified it. I don't know.
Yeah. And so I'm not mad about it at all, even though, weirdly enough, the reviews for the first movie and the second movie are about the same. They're kind of like,
Huh.
And so I'm like, the first one does it so much better than the second one.
The second movie just made me mad.
Which makes me sad, because that makes me think the revival is dead.
I hope not.
I mean, they've done it so many times. We could go back and watch the older ones. Some of them are really, really good.
If you hadn't read the book ahead of time, it would have been a great movie.
Yeah, but we read the book.
It's fine. I'll just be bitter.
So yeah, we'll see if the modern revival continues, because I was really enjoying some of the camera work that they were doing and some of the celebrities that they were pulling in. A little bit of a who's who.
Yeah, for sure.
And I really like the person that they got to play Poirot. Anyway, we'll see what happens in the future. But yeah, there's been a lot of media made about Agatha Christie. I feel like TV shows and movies, I feel like every single book at this point has has probably had something made of it.
Probably.
I would need to go actually confirm that, but I would not be surprised. There's just like so much. And there are quite a few video games, but I really enjoyed the Murder on the Orient Express video game. I don't like the and then there was none because you have to be an external person and the whole point is everybody dies, but you can make it so not everyone dies and there's a ghost. They had to do so many things to make it a video game, whereas this one is definitely, you could see it being a point and click adventure game.
Yeah.
You talk to people, you do a little bit of exploration, and then you solve the murder. Much better format, but we're talking about a book, not the 1001 other media.
That's another episode.
It's a whole nother episode. That's another YouTube channel. Oh my gosh. Age level. This is adult. I was in high school when I first read it, but young high school, like a freshman probably. So age level adult in that's the generic age level for books.
Yeah, I wouldn't give this like a middle schooler to read.
I think it would depend on the middle schooler.
That's true. Maturity level based.
To go to the content warning, we do have murder, kidnapping, and death of a child, childbirth, death, as in someone dies during childbirth and loses the baby, suicide, and blood. But the most PC version of all of that, it really is just mentioned, oh, a child was kidnapped.
Yeah.
There's no actively going through it, because I'm reading a book now where it really goes into kidnapping and stuff.
You're sort of removed from the situation.
Yeah. So it's there. The content warning is there for anyone who's just like, I don't feel like putting up with that today. But to judge a book by its cover, the cover I had at the time, they weren't doing the really cool Art Deco style. So it really just was this picture of an old steam train in snow.
Okay.
And I was just like, cool. This is about a murder on a train.
As one would expect. My cover was, I guess, the more Art Deco.
The Art Deco has the train and then it has line art, and so it's going from left to right instead of the cover I had where it was kind of coming at you at a little bit of an angle. And then it has red smoke coming up. I really like the Art Deco style. I'm trying to collect all of them because I think they're doing a new reprint and they're doing new covers again, and so I'm desperately trying to collect the really cool Art Deco style before it goes away, but I don't think I'll be able to, man.
I got some concerned looks reading this on the beach with that cover just out there for the world to see.
Why? Of all the things, that's not bad. It's a classic, guys. Why are you so upset?
I don't know if it was the book cover or just people just looking because it's the beach. They're being nosy.
The beach is a perfect place to read a murder mystery.
It really is. Yeah, it just really sets you in the right mood for murder.
So you watched the movie first, so I don't know if you could have had thoughts about the cover.
I thought the cover looked cool. That's why I picked that one. And it was the only one on Amazon, but that's besides the point. I still think the cover looks cool.
Funnily enough, I buy a lot of books secondhand because we buy so many books. So the one I got was the large print, and so all my other books line up except for that one that's extra tall because it's large print.
So you can enjoy it when you're older. Just that one, though. None of the other ones.
None of the other ones.
They're too small.
So the setup's kind of fun.
The setup was very refreshing. This is so fast-paced.
I still apologize because I did not realize Death on the Nile would take an entire half of the book to get anywhere. But that's the normal. That's why I feel so bad.
Agatha was having a hard time on the Death on the Nile, too. She wanted a break.
I need to break open my anthology and look at exactly why some stuff happened. But so I like the setup in that you meet two of the suspects before they get on the Orient Express.
Yes, I liked how you met them in a different setting.
Yeah, and they're suspicious. Which, okay, we can get this right out of the way. So you meet Mary Debenham and Colonel Arbuthnot? I don't even know. So I'm just going to call him the Colonel.
I truly just read his name as Arthur Knott. I know that's not right, but that's how my brain saw it.
I swear every one of her books has at least one Colonel. I guess they're just hopping around. They're everywhere.
They are.
So you meet Mary and the Colonel. And at the very, very end, after we know who did it and they're explaining why they did it, the very end, last chapter and everything, you find find out that, oh, Mary and the Colonel are actually in love. That is so obvious from the second you meet them.
They're so bad at hiding it.
Because they keep being like, when it's over, or I don't think they say we can be together, but that's hugely implied.
It's very much implied. You just get a little bit of reading between the lines.
So every once in a while, there'll be a thing where it's like, oh, the Colonel's being really protective of Mary, even though he pretends not to know her. It's like, yeah, he's in love with her.
You know, Hercule was like, okay, you totally don't know her. Got it.
No, not at all. Whatever. So they are being suspicious and being all like, when this is all over. Like I said, they don't say it, but like, we can be together, blah, 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 blah. And the Colonel's so upset that she's so distressed. And then Hercule gets off the train that he's on with them, and they are in somewhere. Let's see. I did not write down the location that they end up going to. But he is in a location somewhere.
Somewhere cold.
I think he left Herky and was going somewhere. I can't remember. I am so sorry. I did not write it down.
He's not even there for a full night. He gets there and it's like, I want a room. And then he gets a telegram and they're like, haha, JK, you need to come back to England. So he's like, never mind, I don't need a room, but I want to clean myself off. And then he leaves.
As soon as he checks in, he walks up and he's like, hey, I have a room here. And they're like, oh, you have a telegram.
We just got a letter.
As he's checking in, he's like, oh, do I have enough time to eat food? That's the level of this poor guy who's traveled so far.
No work-life balance.
None.
He would not do well in 2022.
He's in Istanbul. Why did I forget that? Anyway, so he's in Istanbul right now, and he's like, well, crap, I have to go back to London. And the best way to do that is through the Orient Express, which makes a couple stops along the way, but it basically goes from Istanbul to London. I think in the movie he's in Israel? Because there's a shot of him running through the city, and I think one of the shots is of the wall in Israel. That's really important to the Jewish face. That might have been changed. I can't remember off the top of my head, though.
That's fair. I can't remember either.
Anyway, I might every once in a while pop in a little, hey, that was changed. Maybe just because it was more of a, everyone knows what that is kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the important thing is he gets on a train to go to London.
The murder train.
And he has a friend in the train service. I don't know how else to call it that. That basically is the head guy of all of these train systems. So they're like, oh, I can definitely get you on that train. And Poirot's like, awesome. Except it takes a lot more doing to get him on the train because they're like, oh, we'll just give you cabin 13. It's always empty. And then they get there and they're like,
not this time.
Yeah, that's booked. And so at first it looks like he's gonna have to share. And so he has to share a room with a dude. But then they get another train car attached. And so they're allowed to move people around. And so Poirot gets his own. He gets number 1.
Yeah, wasn't he originally sharing with McQueen?
Yes.
For a night or something.
Yeah.
And then McQueen's all like, I thought you left.
Yeah. And so then they add the train car. And so the friend moves to that other car. So Poirot's able to have his room. And so he's number 1, which puts him next to the murder victim.
Yeah.
And then everything came crumbling down.
Yes.
I really liked, there's a mention in the book that's really clever that they mess up in the movie, which actually made me a little sad.
Oh.
They run up, they're like, who hasn't shown up yet? What passengers haven't shown up yet? And so they say a name, and in the book, Poirot's immediately like, I've read my Dickens. He's not coming. And it is.
Oh, yeah. It's just a made-up name.
It's a story where the name is used as a placeholder and nobody exists. And so he's like, I've read my Dickens. And then they mess it up in the movie, and instead of him saying that, he just says, like, I'll be good and read my Dickens or something. And it's just like, meh. No, it was good. I don't know. Maybe if it was too hard a reference for people to get in whenever it came out. What was that, like 2016?
Probably.
Something like that. Anyway, 2016, 2017. I think it was 5 years ago. Anyway, so I'm sad about that. But he gets on the train, and then a couple of weird things start happening. But the most important thing is there's this dude, Ratchet, and the first time Poirot looks into his eyes, he's convinced that Ratchet is pure evil.
Oh, he sees him at the hotel.
Oh, that's right.
He sees him when he's eating lunch. And he's like, I don't like this man. Something about his face.
Yes. That's when he was grabbing dinner, and Hercule is just like, he's pure evil. I'm convinced.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot he met him before they get on the train. Yeah.
Yep.
But anyway, so when he gets on the train, Poirot does his thing and he looks everybody over. And this is my only real gripe with the book. It takes forever to get names of the characters.
It does.
I found myself confusing who was who. Like, I kept confusing the German maid with the Swedish missionary.
Oh.
Because all you get for the Swedish missionary, who's Greta, is that she's sheep-like. And I kept confusing. I was like, okay, who was that? Was that the Swedish one or was that the German one? Because they just keep referring to her like she's a sheep.
Which really got hard after a while because I started imagining an actual sheep. And I was like, this is with like too much Animal Crossing.
Yes.
A little sheep.
But yeah, I kept confusing Greta and Hildegard. Those are the two I actually had issues with. But there were other ones where I'm like, who are you? What is happening? Like Cyrus, I don't remember that's his name. I just remember the American because they took so long to get to names.
Oh, yeah. And like the Italian. Where are these people?
So that's my only gripe. It takes a really long time to get names.
Yeah.
And that was hard because I was trying to make my notes. And so I would write out the descriptions because she gives such, I don't know, descriptive descriptions.
Yeah, they're really good descriptions.
Here for Ratchet, 60s, slightly bald, false teeth, small, deep-set, crafty eyes, husky voice. That's pretty specific.
Yep.
Cyrus Hardman, 41, big, fleshy, coarse-featured face. Chews gum.
Such an American thing that cracked me up.
Yeah. The princess, ugly and old, proper, wears a bunch of jewelry. I think she also called her toad-like.
She did. I had to stop for a second. I was like, Agatha.
But it immediately conjures a face, doesn't it?
It does.
You immediately know what she's talking about.
Yeah. I don't know. Did she base these off of real people? Was she just out in public writing and she went, you look like a toad. You're going to be in my book.
I don't know. But that was the one thing, because Judi Dench plays the princess in the movie, and I'm like, you are not toad-like. You are too beautiful for this.
She was.
I think she looks really regal. But at the same time, it would be really weird to actually find someone that's super toad-like and be like, I am casting you because you are toad-like. It'd be a little offensive.
Be a little offensive.
But anyway. So it describes everyone. There's 13 passengers. Ratchet then comes to Poirot and is like, hey, you should help me out because I know who you are and I want to pay you $20,000, which 1930s money to now.
Yeah, is a lot.
Let's do this. What is that? I should have looked it up before. The average inflation for every $1 in 1930s money is $17.50 now. So you can already imagine.
So today, that would be 350,000-ish.
That's a lot.
Dang. Man's just walking around with cash. Goodness.
And Poirot turns him down. Oh my goodness.
Because he does not like his face.
I wrote it down, and should I ever be so deeply burned by a Belgian with a silly mustache?
Seriously, he's like, I just don't like your face. Okay, Poirot. Jeez.
Yeah, why have you turned me down? He says, it's simple. I don't like your face.
It's truly the simple things that are the meanest.
Oh my goodness, should I ever be so thoroughly burned by a small man with an egg head from Belgium and a silly mustache?
Yes.
I think I would also die. Not by murder. Well, I don't know. Technically, I would be murdered by Poirot. Oh my goodness.
Cause of death, burns.
That is just amazing. Anyway, so yeah, he turns him down, and then the next day happens, and that night, a bunch of really weird things start going down. He hears Ratchet crying in the cabin, and it wakes Poirot up, and the conductor is like, hey, what's going on? And
oh, yeah. He's like, no, everything's fine, or something like that.
Yeah, so the conductor knocks a couple times, and then Ratchet finally responds, so Poirot goes back to sleep. Well, he goes back to bed. He can't really sleep. And he hears Ratchet being quiet. And then down the hallway, Hubbard is pinging her little bell or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Obnoxiously.
Yeah, and it takes the conductor conductor a little while to get to her. And then Poirot's like, hey, I want some water, and buzzes as well. So he goes to Hubbard. There's a bit of a commotion. Poirot can't really make out what's going on. And then he comes to Poirot, and Poirot's like, hey, what's going on? And the conductor gonna give all the gossip. No professionalism.
No, that American lady.
It's just like, yeah, she's convinced there's a man in her room. And then that's also when he's like, oh, and they're stuck in a snowdrift. And I'm just like, if a conductor saw a snowdrift on the train tracks, do they slow down or do they try to make it and then they get stuck?
I feel like they at one point made trains with the front end that looks almost like a bulldozer.
The guards, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe it was just too much snow.
I was just curious. Do they try to muscle through or do they...
Yeah, I was like, did they plow into it?
Anyway, this is like super beside this point. This is what my mind thinks. So then Poirot's about to go to sleep again. He has his water. And then a heavy thud on his door. And then he quickly gets up to go look at it. No one's there. All he sees a woman in a red kimono walking the other way.
It has like a dragon on the back, doesn't it?
Yeah. And in the other direction, the conductor is busy doing something else. So it's immediately to me, okay, that's suspicious. I'm pretty sure it's the woman doing it.
Yeah.
That would make the most sense, unless the conductor's really good at hitting doors and then running back and looking busy.
Super speed.
Yeah. And for some reason, Poirot's like, oh, I just must suffer from nerves, and like goes to sleep.
Such as like the fancy way of being like, I'm just anxious, it's fine.
Like, I just need to go to bed. This is too much.
Yeah.
The next morning, everyone's so upset about being stuck, and it's like, oh, my connections, and my urgent business, and my family waiting for me. And a conductor comes in.
We have a situation.
Hey, we got a problem. Let's go this way. Brings him to the friend. Ratchet be dead. He's in that room right there, and he has been stabbed in his own bed. And apparently, Yugoslavia, of all of the countries they go through, Yugoslavia doesn't require a police force to be on the train.
How convenient.
Very. And there's a doctor.
There's always a doctor.
Poirot's not a doctor. He knows when he needs his specialists. They say that he died between midnight and 2 a.m. And based on the fact that the conductor, quote unquote, saw him, you know, when he spoke French.
Yeah.
Even though he doesn't know how to speak French.
No.
Which you know at that point. So you're immediately like, that's not him.
But then Poirot doesn't put it together for a while, and he's like, wait, he doesn't speak French.
Well, I don't know if he so much doesn't put it together as...
It's just not mentioned.
Yeah. Because there's several times he asks, what are your theories? And he's like, thoughts.
I'll tell you later.
Stuff doesn't add up. I'm still working on it. I feel like there's threads that he has, and he's probably like, this is weird, but he can't attribute it quite yet, so he doesn't want to say.
Not jump into any conclusions.
He doesn't want to just throw things out there for other people to possibly misconstrue.
Yeah.
He's got to work it out himself. He's a little bit prideful.
That's okay.
But he kind of deserves it.
He is very good at what he does.
He's very good at what he does. And he knows he's very good at what he does.
If I was that good, I would also be the same way.
Yeah. And so there's a bunch of weird things, like the window's open, but there's no snow prints outside, and there's a pipe cleaner that they find, and a woman's handkerchief.
With the letter H on it.
With a letter H on it. And low-key, not even low-key, high-key, I really love the twist about the handkerchief because they keep trying to attribute it to one of the women with an H in their name.
And then she's like, no, it's actually an N in Russian. And I was like, oh yeah, it is.
It's a completely different alphabet. They've been thinking it's an H in the Latin alphabet, which is English and what all of that. But actually, it's the Cyrillic alphabet.
Russian.
And H means
in.
So it's actually the princesses.
Yes.
Natalia. So I actually did really appreciate that, only because my husband speaks Russian, and so we'll write in the Cyrillic alphabet.
Yeah, I was like, I should have figured this out sooner, but it's fine.
It's clever, because it's one of those things, I should have figured that out. But at the same time, she uses those moments where you take things as you see them. If you're an English speaker or a Spanish speaker or any sort of Romance language, you would take for granted that everything is in a Latin alphabet until It's like, oh, wait a second. There are other alphabets.
Yeah, it's a little reality check.
I like moments like that because it's not unfair.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, how in the world was I supposed to figure that out? Or it was convoluted or it's stupid. Some mystery novels have jumps in logic and you're just like, why in the world would I have ever figured that out? But this was a really good one. I liked it because I forget about it a lot of times, even though I reread the book. And you're just like, H.
You thought it was an H.
It's totally an H. Yeah, of course it's an H. And then you get to it and it's like, no, it's an N. God dang it.
Can I keep you on your toes? It was a good twist.
I like it a lot. And especially in embroidery, I feel like that would make it harder to tell whether it's one or the other, you know?
Oh, yeah.
I also kind of like the Cyrillic alphabet. A lot of the time, the letters uppercase to lowercase is just
Smaller.
a B and then a smaller uppercase B.
So nice.
And it's the same thing with H. You can have a big H and then a tiny H.
Work smarter, not harder.
But it also kind of messes you up because some of them legitimately have lower cases and you're like, I have to keep this straight. But most of them really are uppercase and then just a tiny version of the uppercase. I like the Cyrillic alphabet.
Work smarter, not harder, kids.
We don't need all this gibberish. What is going on?
They looked at the Latin alphabet and they were like, not today.
Not today. We will take some of your Latin and some of your Greek, and then we will just add ones and make some up ourselves, and it'll be fine.
Yes.
Anyway, enough about the Cyrillic alphabet and how it's fun. I like that. Anyway, and the pipe cleaner was obvious. Hey, the only guy on the train that smokes pipes. It's his.
Yeah, the kernels.
That's not twisty. That's not as fun. And both of them are you come to find out, are red herrings. So it really doesn't matter that it's just like, meh. Okay, pipe cleaner's not as fun. Or the kernel's clue is not as fun as the handkerchief.
Yeah.
Because the handkerchief is also mixed up in the Countess.
I think her name was Helena, and they changed it to Elena.
Yeah, because that actually does happen, is the Count messes with her name. They drop something on it, and so it's like dirtied, and then does kind of the same thing to the other thing to keep her identity hidden a little bit. And so you find out this really cool thing. It's like, Elena is actually Helena. And so Poirot's like, haha, so this is your handkerchief. And she's like, nope.
Still not mine.
Still not my handkerchief. It's like, wait a second. What?
What's going on? Yes.
The layers of deception we had to go through for this handkerchief. He's slyly asking all these women. And then in the end, the princess just walks up and she's like, it's mine. You read it wrong.
You just didn't know the right alphabet.
No one was being secretive. You didn't figure it out.
Yep.
I love that. I really do like the princess. She's a fun character.
She was a good character. She's just so blunt. I love it.
So, a couple of things went wrong in the plan for the murder that ends up allowing him to catch the murderer.
Yes.
And obviously Poirot being there was not part of the plan. So number one.
No. Contingencies.
But then they redid the plan. So they were going to count Poirot into it. And so that's how you get the woman in a red kimono and somebody speaking French next door and all that. The second thing that goes wrong is Poirot finds a burned piece of paper and is able to just a really cool paper trick kind of where he's able to read what was said on the burned pages, and it mentions a Armstrong case.
The Daisy Armstrong.
Daisy Armstrong. So she was a little girl. She got kidnapped and there was a ransom. Family pays the ransom. Then they find out Daisy was already dead, already been murdered. And it caused such great distress. The mother, who was pregnant at the time, went into labor early. And so she and the child both died. And then eventually the other Colonel Armstrong, who's Daisy's father, commits suicide. It's a really, really upsetting case because they know who did it. It's Ratchet, but it was another name. He's just using Ratchet. I just called him that because I'm lazy and I didn't want to remember his new name.
Cassetti.
That's silly. I don't know.
Ratchet fits him.
It's the hard R and the T's.
It is.
That make it sound
murder-y.
Heavier. I don't know. Murder-y. Cassetti has S's are kind of a soft sound.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I prefer Ratchet. Anyway, the important thing is he gets caught, and he apparently had done this several other times, but he gets off because he knows people.
Yep.
And then he goes on the lam and lives internationally to avoid everything. That's very upsetting.
Yes.
I totally understand, and I think everyone at the end of the book understands why Ratchet was murdered.
He had it coming, just like the song from Chicago.
But even more so, like, I can't even...
Yeah. He truly tested karma and did not win.
Yeah. And as you're going through the book, like I said, it is a lot of let's talk to everybody once about what they were doing in their cabins at the time. Okay, well then let's follow up with a couple things. They do a little bit of investigation, and it's like, okay, well let's ask everybody how they're involved with this. I think there's like 3 rounds where they ask everybody stuff.
I think so.
And there's a slight investigation.
Yeah, it was fun. Something else would show up. Someone would get all defensive and like, why are you talking to me again?
Yeah. So just to go in the order that they're introduced in the book, you come to find out that everyone's related to the Armstrong case. Very spoiler, but you were warned. And Mary Debenham, who was a governess for Daisy.
Yes.
The colonel, not the dad colonel, but the other colonel, too many consonants.
Yeah.
My dyslexia does not comprehend.
His name is Arthur Knott.
Was friends with the colonel.
They fought together, didn't they?
Arthur Knott.
That's just how my brain saw it. It works.
Yes. Then you have Hector McQueen, who is acting as Ratchet's secretary. But I didn't write down his connection. Let me go grab that. Sorry. Okay, so his is a little bit more convoluted.
Yeah, he was a direct connection to it.
His father was the lawyer for the Armstrong family.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a little bit, but he is connected. And I still don't know how they managed to get him so easily in Ratchet's, because the story Hector McQueen tells, and I have no reason to assume he's lying about it.
Oh, yeah.
He was in a hotel where Ratchet was at, which was planned. That was planned. But Ratchet, in a fit of rage, fires his secretary, and then the next morning or later that they have food together. And so I guess it was just taking advantage of the situation.
That's how it seemed to me.
Maybe he was going to try to ingratiate himself, and then it just worked out so perfectly.
It just made it 10 times easier.
Yeah. And so that's how they were related.
Yeah.
So then you have Antonio, who's the Italian, because like I said, you just have descriptions for so much. He supposedly works for Ford Motors.
Yeah, he was the chauffeur.
Yeah, his cover is he works for Ford Motors, which was interesting. I wonder if you can just drop names like that. I guess Ford Motors wasn't too perturbed about having someone who pretended to work for them when they may or may not have been a murderer, even if they were sympathetic and a wonderful person.
Clearly. The PR team wasn't on top of it that day.
Any publicity is good publicity, maybe. I don't know. So yeah, he was the chauffeur. And an interesting thing is his roommate, because some of them had to double up in the cabins, is Edward Masterman. And so he acted as Ratchet's valet, which I think it's more like a personal assistant versus McQueen, who is a secretary and translator.
Maybe the valet like carries everything around.
I don't know.
Like a hotel valet, they take your bags up to the room or something.
Yeah, but the way he did things, he was like, oh, I had to go to his room and make sure he was comfortable and make sure he had his medicine. And
Ratchet was really just a big diva. That's what we find out.
That too. But it was just much more personal. And valet is probably more of a British term. Anyway, he was also in the war. It's always the war.
Yeah.
So he knew Colonel Armstrong that way. And then he went on to be his valet afterwards.
Yes.
But the whole time during the book, Masterman is putting on this, he hates that he's rooming with an Italian because Italians are terrible and blah, blah, blah. And there's this weird racism. It seems a little silly to me.
Italians like to stab. I was like, where did that come from?
Yeah, there was really strong. Oh, the Italian obviously did it. The Italians stab people. That's what they do. It's like a little weird. And then Poirot uses the racial stereotypes to be like, aha, but Italians don't plan. This was clearly planned.
And then they're also like, it's a woman, because only women stabbed in fits of rage or something like that.
Yeah, it's something. It's, you know, the nice little jabs of racism and sexism in these books. But that never ends up being the reason he chooses things. And so I tend to overlook it and be like, okay.
Is it just a product of the times?
Yeah. But you find out at the end that Masterman and the Italian are really good friends. He loves him.
I know. I'm like, how did they... I would crack.
They're like besties. Masterman comes out of this shell and just speaks so warmly of him.
That was a good one.
It's actually very endearing.
He's like a whole different person. This whole book, you're like, Masterman's just like a snobby person. No, he's just a good actor.
That was a cute little twist.
I really liked him in the end.
I liked them.
That man made me smile. They're actually besties.
So Cyrus Hardman, which we talked about a little bit, he claims he's he claims he's a traveling salesman for typewriter ribbons.
Which is very, very niche.
Yeah.
Specifically typewriter ribbons. Okay.
But it makes sense. It's the 1930s. That makes a lot of sense. It'd be like, I don't know, everything's on the internet now, but I would think of like a salesman for Microsoft Office. It makes sense. But then you find out, because he's the one who's staying in mysterious cabin number 16. I said 13 earlier. Oops. 16 that's never supposed to be rented out to anybody. And so pretty soon into the book, he gives up the whole traveling salesman bit. And he's like, but actually, I'm a detective. And I was hired by Ratchet himself to keep him safe.
Yeah. And Poirot's like, is he really as a detective?
I mean, they're like, oh, that would be super easy to check, but they have to get there. You can't do it on the train.
Can't confirm it.
And so he was like, oh, I've been hired to keep Ratchet safe, which, by the way, Ratchet's real first name is, I'm looking at it right now, Lanfranco. And I did not know that. I swear to goodness.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you. It's just always Ratchet or Cassetti. I don't think they've ever said his first name.
It must have, but once, and I never wrote it down.
That's a very weird first name.
Lanfranco Cassetti. Anyway, the important thing is that, okay, so Cyrus is also one that's a friend of a friend of a friend.
Yes.
He was a policeman that was in love with Daisy's French nurse.
Yes, that's right.
Because the police kept trying to pin it on the nurse, she also committed suicide. Yeah. And so that's how Cyrus Hardman, he was in love with the nurse that committed suicide after Daisy was killed. Oh, goodness. She had to sit down and come up with all of these.
Truly, her mind is astonishing.
So then you have the Princess Natalia Dragomirov.
Dragomirov? I don't know.
My husband would be able to say it, and he would say it with the accent, and then it would sound fancy, but I can't.
You can just drop him into the final recording, saying it. James's voice from above.
I need you to say one word for me.
No, just get the whole name.
Based off how it's printed in the book, I would say it is Natalia Dragomirov. Well, in the Russian, because she's female, you're actually technically supposed to add an A at the end of her last name to denote that she's female. So it wouldn't be Dragomirov. That would be male. It'd be Dragomirova, which is female.
Anyway, she is Sonia Armstrong's godmother.
Yeah.
And Sonia is Daisy's mom.
Yeah, because I get her and Linda mixed up.
Yeah, no, Sonia's the mom. We'll get to her.
Okay.
So that's how the princess is related. Godmom. Carolyn Hubbard. Oh my gosh.
Oh, geez. She drove me up a wall.
I loved her for it, though.
It was a very good character. Also, just reading her, I was like, if I met someone like this in real life, I would have issues with them.
But that's the part. I'm like, how much of it was an act?
Probably not very much.
I mean, all of it, because you find out that, okay, so her whole thing is she's over the top and she's kind of a Karen, and she talks a lot about her daughter, like a lot.
The part where Poirot was like, I saw a picture of her daughter, like wasn't impressed and said she was kind of ugly. I was like, oh my gosh.
Oh yeah! No, I wrote down what he said!
What picture were they showing? Because like clearly it wasn't Daisy, because then he would have been like, oh, that's the girl that got murdered.
Okay, so no, she showed a family photo of her daughter and her daughter's 2 kids. And he said, I wrote it down because it made me laugh. So Mrs. Hubbard shows the picture and he's describing it in his way, whatever. It's during the luggage search later on.
Yeah.
Perot's just like, and 2 rather ugly children.
Oh, you had to stop it. I was like, oh my god. Poirot, you can't just say that.
He didn't say it.
You know what I mean.
He definitely thought it though.
And then I was like, Agatha, what did you have against the kids, man?
I don't know. That made it funnier. Because this grandma who's like, my amazing daughter, and look at these children. Aren't they amazing?
They're so beautiful. And he's like, they're kind of ugly.
They're actually rather ugly. It's funny. Yeah, I did write that one down. He has a couple of lines. There's one where I don't know who he was talking to, but he's talking to one of the women and they're like, oh, so you've been hired on for this? And he's like, no, I belong to the world.
Oh, yeah. He truly does.
He really does.
Poor man.
Sometimes he has lines and I'm just like, yes.
He has his moments.
Oh, so you're a part of this? It's like, no, I belong to the world, madame. I am not hired by anyone. He's such a prideful prick. I love it.
Yeah, I feel like reading him, I'm like, this is great. Meeting him, I'd be like,
Oh, no. I would, yeah.
Let me just take a step back here.
Yeah, no, you can totally see how he rubs certain people the wrong way, but I love him so much.
Oh, yeah. It's great reading about him.
Anyway, so Mrs. Hubbard, and she's so extra. I think I had the most notes about her because she just keeps talking about herself.
Yeah.
She knits.
She really likes developing that character.
Yeah.
Get that backstory.
And so you find out it is all an act because dun dun dun, I actually think this is the best reveal.
Yes.
She is the grandmother of Daisy Armstrong.
She's the famous actress Linda Arden.
Yes, who is so good at tragedies. Apparently, she's really good in tragic roles.
I like how they described her voice, like when she started talking, they said it was like, oh, I didn't write it down. It had like a warm voice or something, or like a silky smooth voice. And I was like, okay.
When she turned off the Hubbard act.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I liked it. That was a good one. And then, of course, you have Greta, who's sheep-like, and they will not let you forget that.
They won't. She's just a little Animal Crossing character.
Yes. And she's a missionary or whatever, but actually she's Daisy Armstrong's former nurse.
Yeah.
Because, of course, she is. And then the Count and the Countess. So the Count doesn't have a straight connection.
No.
He's married to the Countess.
Yeah.
The Countess is Eileen Marie Goldberg, originally. That's her maiden name. She is the sister of Sonia Armstrong.
Yes. And the Count was all like, I couldn't let her do the murdering, so I did it.
Yeah, later on you find out everybody did it. And every single one of the passengers takes a stab at him, except the Countess, because the Count was like, she's too delicate, and apparently she was.
She's too precious. Yeah.
So she's the only one that didn't stab him, so he stabs on her behalf. And we still have so many people to go.
I know, it's so much.
So much. That's why most of this book is talking to people, because like I said, it's like a round of what were you doing, and then a round of a luggage search.
And then a round of, who are you really?
Yeah, and so there's so many people. So Hildegard Schmidt is a German lady's maid for the princess.
Yes.
And she's also formerly the Armstrongs' cook.
Yeah, I'm like, how'd you go from cook to lady maid? Quite the transition.
I don't know if she always is, or if it was just an act for the train.
Oh, true. That is very true. I didn't think of that.
Poirot's actually very sneaky with her. I like it. It's one of the moments where he's like, oh, you look like you'd be a great cook. And then Hildegard's like, yeah, I am a great cook. And he's like, why would you need to be a good cook if you were a lady's maid? You were a cook. Ha-ha!
Yes. Okay, Poirot, you're so proud of yourself.
It was good. That was a clever moment. Then you have Pierre Michel, which is the wagon lit, or the conductor, who found the body and who is assigned to that train.
His connection surprised me. I was like, oh, interesting.
Well, he would have had to been, honestly. There is no way they could have pulled off this murder and then the conductor be watching him the whole time.
Without him being in on it. Yeah.
So he is the father of the nursery maid who committed suicide.
Yes.
Because the nursemaid was French. He's also French. And once again, that's a connection that you could have made. Like, French people. Interesting.
Yep.
So that is all the people. So many people.
I was losing track of people by the end of it. I was like, oh my gosh.
So many people. And once again, that's why it's so frustrating that we get the names so late in the game, comparatively. But yeah, so at the end, Poirot sits everybody down and, has the moment that every detective novel has. And he's sitting with the doctor and his friend and is like, okay, I have one of two theories. Theory one is not everyone, but a number of people have been pointing to this small man that is womanish.
Has a womanly voice or whatever.
Yeah. So Poirot's like, okay, so one of two theories. One is that this mysterious small man who's woman-like, but also man-like, did it and then somehow managed to leave the train. Or everyone did it. Every single one of you sitting here except my friend and the doctor. I was actually a little bit surprised the doctor didn't get roped in.
Yeah. I was like, how is he just randomly on the train?
Always gotta have a doctor. Also, to talk about the doctor a little bit, he is kind of snippy because he doesn't like the games. He wants to know what's going on.
Oh my gosh. When Poirot was like,
sit there and think!
And then the doctor's thoughts, I was like, doctor?
And then you find out
he's having an affair?
He's having an affair!
And Agatha just goes, and he's pulled out of certain pornographic thoughts. And I was like, Agatha, I did not need to know that.
I love it. There's just so much detail about this random character. But I also kind of love that Poirot, that made sense to him. He's just like, okay, we have all the pieces. I know we have him. So now we will all just sit here in silence.
And think. Yeah, Poirot, you're a special one.
And so at the end, he's like, okay, I've had my two theories. Didn't you guys have a good think? And they were like, oh, yeah.
Yes, totally. And Book's just going down this rabbit hole of anxiety.
Yeah. So yeah, those are the two theories. And of course, Lauren, who's Mrs. Hubbard, gives the sympathetic, oh, this is why we did it. And he deserved to do it. And da-da-da-da-da-da. So at the end, Poirot kind of turns it over to the doctor and his friend. And he's like, so which theory do you think it is? Because they have to tell the police something at the next stop.
Yeah, and they hint heavily, oh, it's just some strange person.
Yeah, and they're like, let's go with theory one. Just the random dude, he got away. Oh, that sucks. Oh, well. And so they just, the entire train gets away with murder.
I wonder how Poirot felt about that.
He agrees.
He's so orderly, though. He likes order.
He does.
And I'm like, did that eat him up on the inside? Or was he sort of like, this is the universe, divine judgment?
He does, but he also has his own version of justice. We saw this on the Death with the Nile.
True.
Where he allowed the woman to kill her lover and then commit suicide.
Yeah, that's true. That is very true.
I think that's why he set it up. It was like, oh, it could be one of two theories and we'll figure out which one we like. And then the book ends with they're like, oh, we should go with theory one. And Hercule's like, yeah, let's go with theory one. And so he's kind of a neutral good in that respect.
He is. He's like, good has been done even if it's not lawful.
Yeah, the rules are what suits him best. So he's very methodical and he definitely does have a sense of justice in him, that he would solve the murder of this horrible man because murderers should be brought to justice until he learns the story. And then he's like, yep, he deserved it.
He had it coming.
He had it coming.
He only had himself to play.
And so you have an entire book of him trying to solve this and talking about the psychology every single time he said that. It was just like, yes, the Google.
Freud rolls over in his grave.
It was relatively new, so I love that. There are little time capsule moments where I'm like, I love it.
Yes.
And then he also talks about the gray cells.
That was so cute.
You need to use your gray cells.
I should start saying that to people. Be like, Hannah, what the heck?
No, you have to have a silly mustache to really pull it off, to talk about the gray cells.
Okay, so for Halloween this year...
That's kind of why I like the modern interpretation.
His mustache is very good in the modern.
It's wonderful. Probably a little bit extra for what it actually is, what it sounds like in the book, but I love it.
It's fine. We can be extra. Nothing wrong with that.
I love it. He deserves it. But anyway, yeah, they did it. All of them. Everyone. All of them. General thoughts. It's such, and maybe it's just because it was the first one I ever read, but I always feel like I come back to this book as the standard for classic Poirot.
It seems like it. I mean, maybe it's because it's the first movie I saw. I'm gonna judge him against this.
But yeah, that's why I'm like, I totally understand why they picked this book to be the first movie.
He's well rounded out. He has a personality. You don't have to know anything previously. It can just stand by itself.
Yeah, and it has such good pacing that it really draws you in, and I'm still sorry about Death on the Nile.
It's fine. It was good. It made up for it at the end.
It's not that it's not a good book, but it's such an outlier in the no one's murdered until halfway through this book.
Yeah.
Normally it's like this, and the murder happens, and then Poirot just happens to be there. Honestly, so far of all the ones I've read, my favorite is Murder of Roger Ackroyd, where he's introduced barely before the murder is announced.
Oh gosh. They're like, here's this character, and he's dead.
He's retired, and he's retired to this town, and the only reason he meets the character because he's retired and has decided he's going to devote himself to gardening vegetable marrow, and he gets mad and throws one over the fence and almost kills the main character.
What?
Oh, that was my favorite so far. I feel like a lot of the introductions are done really well, so I love it. He randomly shows up right before the murder or right after the murder, and he's involved with the murder, and a lot of times the suspects are like, who even are you?
Who are you?
He's like, I'm the man who's going to solve your murder. That's who I am. But he says it in so many other ways, and sometimes in French.
Yes.
He actually doesn't speak too much French in this book, in that there's not a lot of French phrases that he says. There's a lot of times where he talks in French, and then it's translated.
But yeah, I did notice that Death on the Nile, there's lots of little phrases that I had to go in and translate, but this one there wasn't
as many.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just because they had so many conversations to get through.
So many.
But he does have, but the book has a good amount of Christie-isms, but in the best way. So I love it.
Also, her writing is very distinct.
Yes.
Very unique. I really enjoy it. It just takes some getting used to, for sure.
Yeah, she is a fun time. Highly recommend.
I'm enjoying it.
This is why she is the queen of mystery and one of the best-selling authors of all time. And I think, and then there was none specifically, it's like the 6th bestseller of all time. Like Bible #1 bestseller of all time.
Wow.
She gets a lot of credit, and yet she doesn't get as much credit as she deserves. It's kind of ridiculous.
She's very underrated.
And yet she's so popular. That's the crazy thing. She should just forever be mainstream popular.
That'd be so nice.
That's why I have to spread the Christieism. This is my mission. I've become a cleric of Agatha Christie.
Please play that in a campaign.
I don't even know what that would be like.
Make her your deity.
Oh my gosh, that's a thought.
Please.
That's a fun train. Anyway.
I'll play a Poirot character.
Oh my gosh. We needed a Miss Marple. We'd have to read a couple of Miss Marple books.
Oh, Miss Marple. I watched that with my mom.
Oh my gosh. Ooh, that would be an interesting campaign. Anyway, that's given me some interesting thoughts, though.
That would be chaotic.
One question for the author. I'm really curious if at any point in her life that Agatha Christie would ever be like, yeah, my books will be made into movies. Because yeah, she would never imagine a video game. That would never cross her mind. But silent films did exist, and then there were the talkies, and let me see when the first Agatha Christie movie was made. Not about her, but her books.
That's a good question. Did she start writing intentionally for movies, or?
No, and she definitely never did that.
Well, I meant, did she start writing the movies in mind, being like, well, maybe one day.
But I was just like, that's a crazy thought, isn't it?
That is.
Especially when she started writing. 1945. Okay, there's a 1945 and then there was none.
Wow.
That would be so trippy. The first ever to see your book become a movie and be one of the first. That would be so crazy.
Her first husband's last name was Christie, and she was only married to him for 14 years. And I guess she stayed Agatha Christie instead of Agatha Malowan.
Yeah, it's like when you publish your dissertation and then whatever name it is, whether you're married or not married, it's just easier to keep whatever name it is at that time.
You sort of gotta like stick with that name.
Famous singers do that too. Like Carrie Underwood's married, but she still goes by Underwood because that's the name she became famous for.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
So she lived till 1976, long enough to see a lot of these movies.
I wonder if she did go see the movies.
I don't know.
Or she was like, I don't wanna.
That's so crazy to think about. Because now, of course, books are made into movies and whatnot.
It's like a thing you strive for. I want my book to be a movie.
Yeah, and so that'd be so crazy to think about just when they approached her or her publisher. I don't know who owned the publication rights to everything because I don't know a lot about 1930s publishing. But still, that would be crazy to have a talkie that's your book, but it's a movie.
I wonder what she'd think of the movies now.
Well, she'd probably hate Death on the Nile.
She'd be like, what'd you do to my characters?
That is another good question. I wonder what she thought of the movie. Legitimately, inwardly.
Yeah. But she was like, they did a really good job. Or she was like, they butchered it. It was terrible.
I hate it. This was never meant to be.
I wonder. That's a good one.
Oh, there's also a stage play called The Mousetrap that holds the world record for the longest initial run.
I've heard of that one.
Okay, so it opened in 1952.
Okay.
And then it's still going on. It apparently closed down in March 2020 because COVID, but it reopened in May 2021, so it's still going on.
Yeah, I feel like, granted, this was a while ago, I think my college might have done a play of The Mousetrap.
That's cool.
Yeah, it has her mark all over it. But my college, when they did either The Mousetrap or another murder mystery, the whole set was in grayscale. It was really cool.
I wonder what she thought of the movies and the stage play and everything.
Like, Google says she wrote the stage play.
Yeah, but it's still, like, that's crazy.
That is.
Obviously, she was very smart and she did think very highly of herself, but
I wonder if she, like, understood, like, creative liberty and stuff.
well, I don't think there's any way to really process when she first published her first book ever to realize the scale to which her success would.
Yeah, if she saw any of this coming, or if it was just like, well, okay then.
I don't know if it's possible she could have.
Yeah, I don't think anybody would have imagined it.
Her novels have sold more than 2 billion copies.
Oh my gosh.
Even for a really popular author today, that is crazy numbers. That's insane.
That is a lot. I didn't realize she'd sold so many.
It's honestly mind-boggling the amount of success she's had.
It is.
It's honestly crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's now had more than 30 feature films based on her works, television, radio, video games.
Does she ever have kids or anything? Where does all the money go from this?
She had a child and a nephew. I don't know where the money went.
Does it go like some foundation or does it go to the family?
I don't know.
That's just logistics.
She had a child named Rosalind Hicks who passed away in 2004, and she had a child, but Wikipedia is not telling me who the child is.
Imagine getting to be like, my grandmother was Agatha Christie.
See, I always feel like that's a double-edged sword.
Fair enough.
Because when someone is so beloved, but you know them personally, don't meet your heroes kind of thing.
I mean, Agatha died in the 70s, so I guess it would depend on how old her grandchild is.
But her mom would have known her so personally.
That's true.
And just because you're a successful person doesn't mean you're a great mom.
I mean, you're a good person.
I don't actually know much about her and her child.
Just because you're successful doesn't mean you're a good person. Not gonna name a certain author, but
I think of Lucille Ball as a great example of this. Her face to the public and how she actually acted were very different.
very different. Yeah.
And it's not like, oh, she was a bad person. It was different. She was not a nurturing, that type of mom mom.
Yeah.
And so when our kids grew up and talked about it, it's very different.
Yeah, just sort of changed people's perceptions.
So I don't know. I don't think I would want to be related to a famous person. That feels really draining.
That's fair. It does.
Because you didn't ask to be famous. You were just born. Rating. I would give this international travel out of 10.
Oh, I was going Crazy Train out of 10.
It's a little confusing. It's very draining. And at the end, you're very happy to make it home. But you have some really good memories. And you probably had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I just think the whole song sums it up pretty well. Every so often, I would just have the beginning sound of that song just play in my head. This doesn't exactly match up, but it is a crazy train.
It is a crazy train.
Like, quite literally.
The inspiration, not at all.
No, but it works.
I very much doubt Osborne was thinking about Murder on the Orient Express. He read it specifically beforehand and then was like,
he read this book and he goes, you know what?
we need to soundtrack this book. No.
We have to write this song that has nothing to do with this book, but I am inspired.
None of this happened.
What if it's actually what happened?
It's not.
I know. That'd just be funny.
He was not out there eating live bats and reading Agatha Christie.
Well, how do you know? Maybe he's cultured.
Maybe he's cultured.
He was reading the books to the bats and then he would eat them.
Oh my gosh. Would you read this again? Yes.
Yes.
I've read it many times. I enjoy rereading Agatha Christie just because I always feel like there's little things you can pick up beforehand.
Yeah. I feel like every time you read these books, especially if it's been a while between, you're probably like, oh, I forgot about that, or I didn't notice that the first time.
Yeah, like I forgot about the handkerchief again, but it is smart. And there were other little things I picked up knowing what happens in the end. And so you were able to look at everybody. And it was always like, there's 3 people who could speak to this and 3 people who could speak to this. It's so well coordinated.
They really planned it out, yeah.
And so you can totally see it going back through. And I think that's really fun.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how the rest of her books are.
They're good. We are actually hitting a new territory, trying to actually read these in order and not just random books that I have decided that we are reading. But there are a lot of Poirot books I have not read.
Ooh.
So we will be hitting interesting territory.
Oh boy. This will be fun for both of us.
Yes. Adventure. Excelsior.
Adventure is out there.
But have you read this book? If you could travel anywhere by train, where would you go? Do you have any book recommendations for us? Tell us all about it in the comments below. If you like the video, hit like. And if you're enjoying yourself, hit subscribe for more. Thank you for exploring Murder on the Orient Express with us. I'm Sam Reiner.
And I'm Hannah Rossell.
And we hope to see you and a friend here next time. Escape with Me Book Club is a Lunar Skulk production. Check us out on TikTok or Instagram to keep up to date with us. Lunar_SKULK.